If you had one shot or one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture it or just let it slip?
Yo. His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti, he's nervous, but on the surface he looks calm and ready to drop bombs. But he keeps on forgetting what he wrote down. The whole crowd goes so loud, he opens his mouth, but the words won't come out. He's choking how? Everybody's choking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over, loud. Snap back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Oh, there goes rabbit. He choke. He's so mad, but he won't give up. Daddies, he know he won't have it. He knows his whole back to these ropes. It don't matter, he's dope. He knows that, but he's broke. He's so stagnant, he knows when he goes back to this mobile home, that's when it's back to the lab again, yo. This old rhapsody better go back to this moment and hope it don't pass him.
Listen, we can talk about the flag, but let's talk about the team. Wait.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. Live, as always, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Like it, share it, retweet it out. If you want to get involved with the conversation, today got a lot of really intense conversation to have about the Calvin Ridley situation. Best way to get involved with that conversation, if you're watching on Twitter, is to head over to the YouTube page, DSM Media. That is where I can put your comments right up on the screen like these examples right here. So make sure you head over to the DSM Media YouTube page, and while you're there, hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button if you really like, hit the bell that turns the notifications on so you know when we are live always, which this show is live every single morning, 8:30 a.m. What's up, Mark? Thanks for tuning in today. We are brought to you by Manscaped, the leader in men's grooming products. Check them out, manscaped.com. They're the goat and below the waist maintenance. Use promo code DSM at checkout. DSM, that gets you 20% off free shipping. Lets them know Team DSM sent you. We got a new sponsor for the morning show, Trending in the AM here. Let me put the banner up on the screen here, 99jersey.com. Everybody always wonders where I got that really kick-ass Sugar Shane Falco jersey from. Everybody's always asking, yo, is that a Falco back there? Cost me a ton of money in the Sugar Bowl. Well, go check out my friends at 99jersey.com. They have the best non-professional jerseys there. They got movies. They got the Al Bundy. They got high school jerseys of LeBron James, all the college jerseys of all your favorite basketball players and baseball players. You name it, they've got it. Great quality jerseys, great site. Check them out, 99jersey.com. And if you use the morning show's name, Trending, at checkout as a promo code, it gets you 15% off. You can't beat it. So make sure you check them out, 99jersey.com. Promo code Trending for 15% off. Again, you could be just like me with the Falco. I mean, they got Mighty Ducks. What's his name? Conway or whatever his name was from that movie. I mean, they got some great stuff. I'm actually going to put a commercial together with all the jerseys there, and so you guys can see them and some promotional stuff for them. But check them out, 99jersey.com. All right, so we got a jam-packed show today, obviously. I have a special guest coming on today, hopefully, Arthor Anderson. He's one of the clients of Pro Level Agencies. I'm still waiting to hear from him. He's got the links. We'll just see if he tunes in here shortly. But while we're waiting for him, today's show, we've got lots of really interesting things to talk about. We got to talk about this Calvin Ridley situation, being suspended for the year for gambling on football. It's a hot topic. I know my man Mark, who's listening right now, probably on Apple CarPlay in his car or YouTube in his car. I know me and him disagree. We were already going back and forth in messages yesterday about it, disagree on it. But also, not only do we have to talk about that, but that affects the free agency and trade market for wide receivers because he was a hot name, especially for the Eagles, on the market. So we're going to talk the free agency aspect of it. We're also going to talk the suspension and everything that all that going into it. We're also going to talk today's Sixers big win over the Bulls last night. Dominant win, dominant performance again. Joel Embiid against the Bulls. I don't think I need to say anything about that. Joel Embiid and the Bulls are, he pretty much owns Chicago. He's pretty much bought up every condo there is in Chicago and owns all that real estate. So let's talk Calvin Ridley here. So Calvin Ridley yesterday, it came out yesterday afternoon, that Calvin Ridley was suspended for the entire 2022 season. He was suspended for gambling on football. So this came out, and as you read more into it and more, details about it, he was obviously out last year for a big portion of the year due to mental health issues. Struggling, just like Lane Johnson missed some time last year. He spent quite a bit of time out for the Falcons last year. He missed more than half the season. So the gambling happened while he was out away from the team. He gambled. It came out 3 same game parlays, a 3, a 5, and 8. If anybody's not a gambler, a same game parlay is when you bet 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things and you parlay them all together. Your odds go up. You got to hit them all, and if you hit them all, then it's a use your payout. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to plant my flag in this right now. I don't care if he was with the team. I don't care if he wasn't with the team. As an athlete in any sport, not just football, any sport, you do not gamble on your sport. That is rule 101 you are taught. Nobody that's an athlete in any of the major sports has never not heard of Pete Rose. Pete Rose gambled as a coach. Pete Rose was there and gambled. And he's been suspended for life from baseball. Life. He got life. The guy hasn't coached in 20 years, 30 years. He's still, he's not in the Hall of Fame, the all-time hits leader. And I know people are going to say it's a totally different situation. And it is, because he was gambling on his team as the coach, which he directly had the effect of outcome. He could affect the outcome of the game to help his win. It doesn't matter. He still gambled on the game. You do not gamble on your team or on your sport. It is rule 101. People know that. And Calvin Ridley did it. And Calvin Ridley, if you go through his Twitter page yesterday after all this news broke, Calvin Ridley doesn't even think he did anything wrong. I mean, you see it, the tweets he made yesterday after this all. I bet $1,500. I don't have a problem. I can't even watch football. Just go and be more healthy when I come back. I know I was wrong, but 1 year, come on now. Look, the guy don't even know what he did wrong. The guy just keeps digging himself a bigger ditch. Look, there are people that are against it. People think that it's too high of a suspension. We're going to talk about that in a second. But the fact is, he gambled. I don't care that he was away from the team. He's still a part of the team. He's still a part of the roster. He still had intricate knowledge of what was going on with that team on a weekly basis. He might not have been there and practicing, but I'm sure he still knew a lot about what was going on with that team. You do not. First off, let's backtrack for a second. What kind of an idiot would gamble on your Falcons when the Falcons are the worst team in the league? He was betting for the Falcons to win games. What an idiot. He should have known better. So maybe he doesn't. Maybe he deserves a suspension for being whatever. I'll send you the link right now, Mark. I'll send it over to Twitter. Look, he did what he did, and it was obviously wrong. But that's beside the point. And I know Mark wants to jump in because I know he's totally against this, and he's my man on Monday mornings with Overreaction Monday. But Mark, link set to your Twitter. Jump on in. Look, wrong. You do not gamble on your sport. Plain and simple. That is it. Now, if you want to debate the severity of the penalty, 1 full year suspension, you could do that. I understand everybody's coming up with these comments about, Ray Rice got 2 games and, these other guys got lesser games for domestic violence and stuff like that. That's understandable, but that doesn't justify what Calvin Ridley did. What's up, Mark? Are you there, buddy?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, man.
Yeah, I don't think I got the video on because I'm in the car.
That's okay.
Do you want to debate Calvin Ridley and the NFL's involvement?
I know you're strongly disagreeing with me about the situation. So you just tell me what your thoughts are on the situation.
All right. First of all, I agree with you. When you become a professional athlete, even when you're an amateur athlete, you are taught that gambling is a big, big no-no. You cannot do that on your sport, on your team, even in other sports. It's just something that you don't do as a professional athlete. That being said, you have an NFL organization, you have a league that is in bed with Las Vegas with these betting apps who's making money off of it, but they're telling him, no, don't do that. Don't bet, but we're going to put a team in Las Vegas and we're going to build this extravagant stadium and we're going to partner with Caesar's Palace and we're going to partner with DraftKings and all the other ones out there, but don't do that. That's the hypocrisy of the NFL.
I disagree with that 110%. I knew you were going to go there. Do you expect the NFL not to the NFL's a business. Caesar Sportsbook, all the FanDuel Sportsbook, DraftKings, it's an advertisement. They advertise beer. They advertise cars. They advertise everything.
It's a slippery
it's
slope.
Two totally separate circumstances. You don't bet on sports. It doesn't matter. Every sports league is involved with some form of gambling aspect. I mean, you look at the NBA last night, the Sixers game. You can watch the broadcast on NBC Sports Philly or on NBC Sports Philly Plus. You can watch the gambling broadcast where they were talking about betting. It is involved in every sport.
I'm glad you brought that up because I had the game on last night on the wrong channel, and I was like, "What the hell is going on?" Why
that was
are they
an awful.
talking
That was
about
the first time I gave them a shot at that. It was such a bad broadcast.
Yeah, I was like, what was I watching? Now, I here's the thing with that, Phil. To your point, yes, they have cars, they have alcohol, the soft drinks, and all these other things. But now you're starting to enter a slippery slope of, you know, even with alcohol, it's a little bit of a slippery slope. I mean, alcohol kills more people every year than anything.
Absolutely.
But now you have gambling that is, if you don't know what you're doing, you get addicted, you will lose everything, and your family will go down with it.
Absolutely.
What's next? Are they going to have logos of Pornhub on the field? And
that's where I was going to go with when marijuana becomes legal nationwide someday. They're going to advertise it. But that's the point. The NFL is a business. We agree all the time about how the owners and the leagues make all this money and whatnot. We've been talking about that with baseball and the lockout and stuff. You cannot expect the owners and the NFL not to get a piece of that puzzle, a piece of that pie. They want their cut of the gambling aspect of it, and that's fine. It still doesn't make gambling when you're a football player right. It just doesn't. The two are totally separate things, and I understand what you're trying to say. I just disagree with it strongly because it's the first thing, like you said, the first thing you're taught. You do not gamble on your sport. You just don't. I don't care who and what they're advertising for. You just don't gamble on it. No ands, ifs, or buts.
Well, yeah, I mean, at least we're in agreement with that. I just think it's peculiar that the NFL for years did not allow like any type of partnership with this, and all of a sudden, and it probably coincides with the advent of these betting apps, that all of a sudden they're now in deep with professional gambling. Maybe we'll go back a little bit more into fantasy football, and that kind of morphed into actually betting on the games. So the fantasy football kind of opened the door, and now the door is wide open. I mean, for years, Vegas wouldn't touch any games of any. It's usually college. If there was pro games, I don't know, but like they would never have them on the board in the if they were being played in the state of Nevada. I believe that's off the board now. So it's like you're getting bed with these guys. Don't be surprised that your employees of your league start to trip up. And
yeah, I mean, absolutely. And you know what? I'm surprised that we haven't had this happen more frequently. It still doesn't make it right. It still is a suspendable offense. It's still in the rules that you don't do it. And that's the problem I'm having. There are so many people that are justifying, and I'm not saying you're justifying it, so many people justifying what Calvin Ridley did. And it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong morally what he did. It's against the rules. And it's something that is a slippery slope. You allow him to do it because he's on some kind of injured list. Then all of a sudden a practice squad player starts to do it. Then all of a sudden a guy that's a second stringer starts to do it. The more and more you allow it to happen, the worse it's going to get. And then there's going to be the thought process always that games are being affected and the outcomes of games are going to be affected because players, coaches, whatever, are gambling on the game. That's why it's just a big no-no. And look, I'm going to bring up the next part of this conversation here in a second. That's why a 1-year suspension, in my opinion, is fair. And everybody wants to talk about all the other suspensions for other things. Tom Brady's 4-game suspension or Ray Rice's 2-game suspension. They are awful suspensions, no doubt about it. But that doesn't mean you have to lessen the suspension for this. This is a serious issue. You got to make an example of Calvin Ridley and say, this is not going to be acceptable. Make the suspension, and hopefully it curtails some other people not to do it in the future. And Calvin Ridley, he's an idiot. Just use your friend's phone if you're really that bad up and want to gamble some. If you want to have some juice on the game, why use your own phone? The NFL has things in place to catch NFL players from doing this. Why? How naive do you have to be to do it on your own?
Well, and that my understanding is the part of the advertising plan that they have set up with these guys is that they have to dime out any of their employees that are using that app and making those bets, and that's how Calvin got caught. But I'm curious as to what is like the level of discipline on that. Like, if you're caught once, do you automatically get a 1-year suspension, or is there a warning, or is there a double secret probation? I'm wondering.
That is the problem with the NFL for all rules with anything. There is no set plan. If you do X wrong, you get this on your first. That's at least with baseball. When it came to steroids or something like that, they have rules in place. Your first suspension is X amount of games. Your second is this. Your third, your lifetime ban, whatever it may be. Football has no game plan. It has no bullet points on what each offense equals in suspension for anything. It's just whatever Roger Goodell and his team of guys that sit down and have a cup of coffee together, whatever they decide. And that's why you see inconsistencies. Because obviously he doesn't want to suspend Tom Brady very long. When Tom Brady breaks the rules, he gets away with it. Ray Rice, domestic violence from years ago, he got a 2-game suspension. Obviously, every person that's watching the show has seen the Ray Rice video from years ago. The guy got 2 games. The guy should have been kicked out of the league forever, in my opinion. But the point is, that's the problem with the NFL. They don't have bylaws that each offense of each type of crime equals whatever suspension. People forget Kareem Hunt was suspended for a little while too for domestic violence, and he's back there playing in Cleveland, no problem. No one even brings it up ever. You got the Ben Roethlisberger accusations and stuff from years ago. Everybody loves Ben Roethlisberger for some reason. There's different standards for sure, and I understand.
I don't.
That. What?
Yeah,
what?
And here's the other thing. You can compare it. Some people are saying apples to oranges, but Spygate, was a form of cheating.
Absolutely.
And then you have this thing going with Stephen Ross and the Dolphins paying to lose. It's not gambling per se, but if it affects the outcome of the game. And Emmanuel Ocho tweeted out a bunch of different Calvin Ridley plays that, boy, looked like he was trying to influence the games that he was playing in. So I think that was I don't know if that's coincidence or what, but I'm saying that's kind of what you get mixed up in when you get in bed with Vegas. But that's also why you have a firm, no doubt about it, this is wrong suspension. Like we're not talking a few games. We're talking a full year here. That's a big deal. A full year suspension is a lot of money, and it's a big deal. So that's why it's such a firm suspension here. The problem is that there's not consistency across the board with other things, and that's where the real issue is. I am, like I said, total apples to oranges comparing gambling and domestic violence. But the fact that there's no clear, concise punishment for anything, that's the problem. But what he did was obviously wrong. But they probably have something that's clear and concise with gambling. They just they don't get to use it very often. Whereas a lot of the problems in the league is domestic violence and breaking the law and things like that, where they just can't get a handle on, and they haven't been able to get a handle on for a long, long time. And I think it kind of, ties into the type of the game that they play. Like it's a violent sport, and there are some people out there that play that game mentally probably should not play that game because they don't have the ability to turn on and off that switch. And that's probably part of the reason why you see a lot of domestic violence and brushes with the law with some of your players in that league. That has always been my thought process. Maybe I'm wrong, but I can't see.
I understand what you're saying. I don't want to make, like, everybody wanted to make this whole thing yesterday about the domestic violence aspect of it, which I'm not trying to push that aside. It's a serious issue, obviously. But domestic violence and gambling are two totally separate issues. I mean, if you look at it, it's also comparing apples to oranges to an extent. But you look at Pete Rose, and I know you and we've talked to Pete Rose before. Obviously, he should be in the Hall of Fame for baseball. He gambled on the game as a head coach or as a manager. in baseball. He was suspended for life. Not for a year, not for a few games, life. The guy's what, in his late 80s now? Still not in the Hall of Fame. One of the greatest hitters of all time. Suspended for life for doing this. And people are complaining about a 1-year suspension being too harsh for Calvin Ridley. It boggles my mind why people are trying to say he shouldn't be suspended at all. And it's really it's insane to me. It really is.
And I agree with the suspension and I agree with the punishment, but you have this here of a wide receiver on one football team that didn't play half the season. And then you have accusations of an owner of a team offering money to a head coach to throw games. Now you're throwing games. If this is true, you're throwing games that you're compromising the integrity of the league. And oh, by the way, if it comes out that these games are thrown, don't you think the gambling industry is going to come and want some of their money back that they had to pay out on those games that had lines set up as if the games were on the up and up? So, and that's what I'm saying. Like, do you really want to get in bed with something like this, with the type of things that could arise as a result? And
you're making great points, and I understand all that, and I actually semi-agree with it, except for the fact that the NFL is a business, and there's billions of dollars to be made advertising-wise, because you got so many of these sports books now. You got Caesars popping up, you got Bet USA or Bet whatever it is. You got, there's so many major sites that are involved in it now. There's literally zero chance that the NFL won't get a piece of that pie. Zero chance. And that's why you've got to be super firm with the suspension here. There should be, I joked yesterday that, the Eagles should offer a 5th or 6th round pick because Ridley will, appeal the suspension. Maybe they drop it. If I'm the NFL, I'm not allowing any appeal. I'm not dropping the suspension one bit. I'm keeping it. I'm making a firm statement. This will not be accepted. And then I'm going to come out and reinforce with the players this offseason. If you get caught gambling, it's a year suspension. If you get caught gambling a second time, it's a lifetime ban. I'm just going to come out and put that down, and I'm going to put it out to the public because we don't know what we know what baseball suspensions are for steroids. We don't know what any of the suspension levels are in football for any crime or rule breaking. Other than if you're smoking weed, you get suspended for like 100 years, like Josh Gordon did. I'm going to make a firm statement on it to put my, stamp that this is not going to be acceptable, because I'm going to continue to accept that gambling money from these companies to advertise, but we're not going to allow our players to do it, and we're going to be very firm on that. And that's what if I'm Roger Goodell, if I'm the NFL, that's what I'm working on. I'm working on a concise statement that's going to prove to the players that this will not be acceptable, even though if you want to say we're in bed with them, that's fine. But that's what I'm going to do as the NFL, because I'm not going to stop taking in that hundreds of millions of dollars that they're getting paid by all these sports books.
Yeah, I just I think they're a business and they have obligations to find new revenue streams, but sometimes you got to draw the line somewhere. And and that's why I found it peculiar that they were willing to partner with the gambling industry. And I honestly, as a fan, I am concerned on how a lot of this is going to play out over time. This is the first shoe to drop.
And this is just football. I mean, the next biggest sport gambling wise is basketball. If anything, basketball is even a bigger gambling sport because it's 82 games versus, the 17 games in the NFL. I have a same game parlay on a Sixers game almost every single night. And like I said, there are a few football shows that are gambling centric, but they're like the Monday night football game or the Sunday night game. Basketball, every single city has alternate broadcasts with gambling aspects and stuff like that going on. When will this shoe drop at basketball that players, and we've already seen, the shaving of points in college basketball before. We had the whole referee scandal with what's his name, Donahue or whatever from Cardinal O'Hara. We've had so many things happen in college basketball. I mean, hell, everybody thinks the Goodfellas was Goodfellas guys, Ray Liotta, the movie with Ray Liotta and all, Henry Hill. Everybody thinks because of the movie they went to jail because of the drug dealing. The real story is they went to jail because of their point shaving scheme.
They shaved the points, yeah.
That was actually the part of the movie that was the least realistic. So that kind of stuff in college sports has been happening for a long, long time. When's the shoe going to drop in pro basketball? Because you're telling me that if Calvin Ridley's doing it, there's got to be some basketball players doing it. They're just doing it smartly on friends' phones. When that shoe drops, that's going to be an issue. But still, it's not going to stop the leagues from accepting these advertising dollars. It's just not.
It will if it starts compromising the integrity of the leagues and the games.
Well, it's not going to compromise it if you make firm statements with these harsh penalties. And that's the thing. A harsh penalty of a year, and if you do it again, you're gone for life. That's a harsh penalty right there. These guys might think twice about placing he claims he only bet $1,500 over 3 different parlays. So maybe 3 $500 bets. So he basically bet $1,500 and he lost $18 million because that's what he was going to get paid next year. That's one hell of a loss right there. He did not have good odds right there whatsoever. So, if you're going to potentially lose hundreds of millions of dollars by getting banned for life, you might think twice if they make these statements and make these examples of the players that get caught doing it.
Well, I'm just glad that he got caught before Howie Roseman traded for him before the draft. So
yeah, I agree. I mean,
it's one less thing we have to worry about.
I was all for trading, our second round pick, the 51st pick for Calvin Ridley. I was willing to put, 51, Andre Dillard, Jalen Reagor, any combination of those guys to get Calvin Ridley here. I was high on the idea of pairing him with Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith, all the Oklahoma kids, or Alabama kids. It's just, honestly, if he's learned his lesson, which his Twitter page shows that he hasn't learned his lesson, I would still be willing to trade for him right now. If you can get him for a 5th or 6th round pick, why not take a shot at him? Is Calvin Ridley next, in 2023 going to be better than whatever 21-year-old kid you draft in the 150th pick in the draft or 200th pick in the draft? Calvin Ridley's still better than them. So you take that shot. I'm just
he would be gone for almost 2 seasons, though, man.
Exactly.
I don't know if I would take that shot, but listen, thank you for pulling me into this because I did want to have a chat with you about it. I'm glad it worked out.
I respect your opinion on it, and I think we agree in parts on it. We just disagree on the part that the NFL shouldn't be involved. And I'm not even saying they should be involved. I'm just saying I understand why they're involved. So we'll have to bring this back up on Monday, on Overreaction Monday, a little bit more as more details come out about it.
Thank you, Phil. I'll talk to you later,
Thanks, Mark.
buddy.
You have a good day. That was Mark, my man, Mark Moschitelli. Make sure you check him out on Twitter at Mark with a C Moschitelli. He joins me every single Monday on the morning show, trending in the AM here for Overreaction Monday. And I think that the conversation that we had, by having the conversation on the air here, we kind of, how do I say this? We kind of agree more than we think we do on the situation. It's just the fact that I disagree on his part that the NFL shouldn't be involved, with the advertising dollars and all on it because, of the slippery slope that leads to. But again, the hundreds of millions of dollars that are involved, they're just not going to say no to it. It's a business. And that's all I have to say about it. If anybody else wants to get involved with this conversation, hold on one second, everybody. Anyway, if anybody else wants to get involved in this conversation, they can either send me a message in the show here. I'll try to get them the link and we can talk about it. Or hit me up on Twitter at Bearded Knowledge right there. It's right there on the screen. And I'd love to have this conversation with you because I think it's an interesting conversation because Mark brings up great points. It's just getting bigger and bigger, gambling in sports. And like I said, basketball, insane amount of gambling with basketball. Golf. I do my golf podcast every Tuesday night tonight. We're going live at 8 instead of 9 tonight. Myself and Jason Sullivan, our guest Chad Eckert, talking about the Players Championship, the 5th major. There's so much gambling on golf. Will golfers start to throw things? Not really. It's a little bit more different, but there literally is gambling shows for every single sport. It does backtrack to the boom in fantasy sports, and then DraftKings and their daily fantasy, and then that stuff they started to open up these sports books, and more states are legalizing gambling. You're going to have these issues, but it's up to the league to be firm and concise that this is not allowed at all. And I think that's the key thing there. The suspension, you can't compare it to the Ray Rice or the Tom Brady or the Josh Gordon Weed suspensions. You can't compare them. The Josh Gordon thing, that's another whole subject. With weed and all. I don't even want to get into that conversation. The domestic violence one specifically, is something that, it's awful. You can't allow it. You can't have it. These guys need harsher penalties for it. But they're not getting them. But it doesn't make what Calvin Ridley did right. It doesn't mean that Calvin Ridley's suspension isn't a good suspension. It is a good suspension. It's a firm suspension. It was a necessary suspension. But Roger Goodell needs to reevaluate how he suspends other things. That's the conversation. He needs to reevaluate those other issues that come up in the league and how he handles them. There is no, to my knowledge, blueprint. That's the word I was trying to get out earlier that I couldn't. There is no blueprint for X crime or X rule-breaking thing. You get this suspension on the first offense, this on the second offense, this on the third offense. At least, like I said, in baseball, there is a blueprint for steroid use. We're using that as an example. Your first suspension is X amount of games. Your second is your second is a full season, and your third is a lifetime ban. It's on paper. Everybody knows what the suspensions are for it. Even with domestic violence in baseball, you saw it with Odubel Herrera, the Phillies. He was suspended without pay, but he wasn't allowed to be cut because there's rules written down for that. You can't be cut. Stupid rule. But at least it's clear and concise what the punishments were for that. And that's what we need out of football. That's what Roger Goodell needs to work on. Clear and concise blueprint for X situation, this is what's going to happen. For Y situation, this is what's going to happen. Not per case-by-case basis for every single situation on any different circumstance. No. Clear and concise blueprint on every potential suspendable offense, what it's going to be. And that's why people are jumping up in arms about this Calvin Ridley situation, the 1-year suspension, because they see the Ray Rice 2 games from years and years ago. They see Kareem Hunt, making millions of dollars after, his, allegation, or I don't even remember if he actually settled or the accusations were dropped. I don't even remember the Kareem Hunt thing because it got brushed under the rug so easily, which it's wrong. Domestic violence is an awful thing, and it runs rampant in sports, especially football and boxing. But it doesn't make what Calvin Ridley did right. And it does not mean that Calvin Ridley shouldn't be suspended for a game. It's a slippery slope you go down. He needs to be suspended. And it needs to be clearly and concisely said after this is all said and done that if this is what you get caught, it's a year suspension. If you get caught a second time, you're gone. You're done. You're out. No more. And that's what it needs to be. And hopefully Roger Goodell sits down this offseason. Hopefully Roger Goodell sends out a memo to the league. Hopefully Roger Goodell figures out a way to make sure that this isn't a problem going forward. As Mark says, it's a slippery slope that could go downhill fast in sports. Let's hope that's not the case. Let's hope that they figure it out. All right, again, the second part of this whole situation is Calvin Ridley is now somebody that isn't available for a lot of football teams. The Eagles were interested in Calvin Ridley. I know it. The Patriots, there were a lot of teams being talked about as trade targets and trade destinations for Calvin Ridley. He's off the market now. Davante Adams, the number one free agent, obviously, isn't going anywhere unless Aaron Rodgers goes somewhere. He could probably get franchise tagged there in Green Bay. The free agent market for the wide receivers, and the Eagles desperately need a wide receiver to pair with Devontae Smith. It's another one off the board, Calvin Ridley. So what does that do to the Eagles and their needs and who they're going to target, and also the cost and the value of some of these guys? Certain guys are starting to, we're going to talk about Allen Robinson, but if he was valued at X, all of a sudden he's valued at X plus 1. And Adam Schefter yesterday started talking on SportsCenter last night about, because of the Calvin Ridley situation, Davante Adams probably won't be available. Then the next available guy would be Chris Godwin and Mike Williams. Chris Godwin of Tampa Bay, who just tore his ACL, late in the season. Mike Williams from the Chargers. Adam Schefter reported that those two guys, it's highly likely that their front offices are saying that they're going to franchise tag those two guys. So there's 2 more guys off the board. That's 2 more guys, 2 less likely opportunities for the Eagles to sign those guys. So now you start creeping down that free agent board. Now you get to the guy that everybody was talking about, Allen Robinson of the Bears. PFF, Pro Football Focus, has him ranked as the 10th best free agent, period, but he was the third best wide receiver. Now all of a sudden, he becomes the best wide receiver available. All of a sudden, that value, he was originally going to be about $10, $15 million cheaper than Chris Godwin. Now I don't know about that. Now, I like Allen Robinson. I would love to see Allen Robinson in midnight green. Out of the guys available left, if Mike Williams and Chris Godwin get franchise tag, I love Mike Williams too, younger, also injury history, but played really well last year. Played a full season last year with Justin Herbert there in Chargers land. But if he's not available, Allen Robinson, the price tag's going to go up. Is Allen Robinson worth the price tag that he's going to get? I don't know. The Eagles need more than one wide receiver. I've been saying it for a while now that they might. Don't be disappointed if Howie Roseman turns in one of those first-round cards and it's Scott Jamison Williams, the Alabama wide receiver. He is going to draft the wide receiver early in the draft, most likely. Not because we want him to, not because so many high draft assets in wide receivers recently. And outside of Devontae Smith, they haven't really worked out, obviously. Don't be surprised if he does it again. But even if you draft a wide receiver early, you still got to spend money on a wide receiver as well. They have a lot of cap space. The cap number was released. It's up. The Eagles are going to have plenty of space once they do some restructuring. They can have up to, shout out to my man Jimmy Smith. He broke it down a week or two ago on his show on the road to victory. Based off a few restructurings, a few moves. Once Brandon Brooks retires after June 1st. Once, who is it? So once some things happen after June 1st, they could have upwards of $50 million in cap space. Now with the new cap number, maybe just over $50 million in cap space. So you're going to need to sign and draft or sign two wide receivers because you don't need one. You need two. You got Devontae Smith. Quez Watkins is your third, fourth wide receiver. Greg Ward, Jonathan Hightower, Jalen Reagor. Jalen Reagor is going to be on this team. I hate to break it to you guys, but Jalen Reagor will be on this team unless he's involved in some big trade. Jalen Reagor will be on this team, but he's going to be your fourth, fifth wide receiver at best. Jonathan Hightower, he's a practice squatter at best. Greg Ward, maybe he's on the team because of his veteran presence, but the guy's not somebody you want on the field. You need two guys. You need Devontae Smith as one. You need to get a second and a third, and then Quez Watkins is your fourth. I guess Quez Watkins could be your slot guy. Maybe that works for him, but you still need more guys. So, Allen Robinson, would you spend the money on him? And I'm looking down the rest of the list. After Allen Robinson, the other free agents available, in no particular order, you got Odell Beckham, injured, coming off an injury. Michael Gallup, coming off of an injury. Antonio Brown, coming off of whatever it is that Antonio Brown's coming off of. The name that popped up the last day or so was Juju Smith-Schuster, Pittsburgh's wide receiver. You might be able to get him. He's 25 years old, maybe on a one-year deal. But as these guys get franchise tagged, and as Calvin Ridley's situation unfolds, all of a sudden Juju Smith-Schuster becomes a more viable option. He's got some injury history issues with him. He's not a guy you're going to spend big money on. But would you like Juju? He creeps up the list now as more information comes out. But not a guy that you necessarily want. He's a slot guy, basically. And if you want to put Quez Watkins in the slot, do you really want Juju Smith-Schuster? I don't know. Christian Kirk. He's a guy I like. He intrigues me. He's another slot guy, but he's a guy I would like to see from Arizona. I know my man Jason Voorhees, who's with me most days. He'll be back on Thursday after his work schedule clears up. DJ Chark Jr., big, deep threat receiver. Maybe you go after him. He's also got issues. William Fuller, Jamison Crowder, Marquise Valdez-Scantling, Russell Gage, Emmanuel Sanders, Cedric Wilson, a guy there in Dallas who, during the injuries of some of the other guys this past year, stepped up and made some big plays. Do you want to go get Cedric Wilson, maybe? He's another slot number two option, maybe. He's got some speed. Maybe you go that way. And that also, whether he's available or not, is another question, because that's the other thing. We don't know what Dallas is doing with Amari Cooper yet. I know a lot of people are jumping all over the Amari Cooper to the Eagles bandwagon. I don't know. Maybe I'd bring in Amari Cooper, but I don't know. I would have to see what the situation arises there. Keelan Cole, T.Y. Hilton. It gets pretty slim pickings as you go down. Zay Jones from the Raiders, a name that slightly intrigues me if you can get him cheap. You go get Allen Robinson and Zay Jones or Cedric Wilson. That's a successful offseason at wide receiver, in my opinion. So it's something to think about. I'm going down Sammy Watkins, A.J. Brown, Braxton Berrios. Rashad Higgins, Deshaun Jackson's available. Honestly, after you get out of that top tier of Mike Williams, Chris Godwin, Devontae Adams, and Allen Robinson, all of a sudden a lot of question marks or a lot of unknowns start to pop up. So again, should the Eagles draft a wide receiver in the first round or with their second round pick, number 51? Don't be surprised. They need two. They're going to have to go out and get them. They're probably knowing Howie Roseman, he's probably going to try his best to throw the money at Allen Robinson. He's already thrown money at a Bears receiver before with Alshon Jeffrey in the past, and that turned out to work out great. Obviously won a Super Bowl. I know it was last year, so wasn't the best, but early on he was a key piece of this Eagles team, the turnaround and that Super Bowl run. So he's got obviously. Howie Roseman's a man of. He does the same thing. You could see the trends and the track record, and he obviously track record of drafting a Bears wide receiver and winning a Super Bowl. So he might go back to that well. And people are undervaluing Allen Robinson a little bit because of the bad season he had last year. But let's be honest, everybody on the Bears had a bad season last year. That was because Coach Nagy had no set quarterback. He went Andy Dalton. He went to Justin Fields. He went back to Andy Dalton. He went to Nick Foles. He went back to Andy Dalton. Went to Justin Fields. He went back to Nick Foles. I mean, it was the worst quarterback rotation. It wasn't like these quarterback rotations were happening because of injuries or whatever. He just couldn't figure out what he wanted to do. So that was a train wreck of a situation. So Allen Robinson's still, in my mind, a really strong, solid option at wide receiver there. And he could definitely be a great opposite of Devontae Smith. I think the two of them paired side by side would create so many matchup issues, free up Devontae Smith a little bit to be more open. Or if you're doubling on Devontae Smith, freeing up Allen Robinson, and that doesn't even count what that'll do for space for Dallas Goedert in the middle of the field. So definitely a great option. It's just, will his price tag get too high? Will there be too many teams gunning for him if the Godwins and if the Mike Williams come off the board because of the franchise tag? So that's where that situation arises. All right, that was a lot of football talk. So we're going to move on real quick here to wrap up this show. Unfortunately, Arthur Anderson, my guest today, he could not join us. Last second little issue there. We'll try to reschedule him. It's all good. We figure that out. That's the part of doing the morning show. You never know what's going to happen and when. You just go with the flow, my friend. That's just what you do. So we're going to get back to basketball now for a little bit. Sixers beat the Bulls last night, 121-106. A lot of interesting stuff came out of last night's game. Furkan Korkmaz not seeing the field or the court. I'm still stuck on football, the field, whatever it is. Joel Embiid, another dominant performance. James Harden, even though he had an off night shooting and scoring, still a major influence in the game. Matisse Thybulle, Tobias Harris, so many things to talk about. But we got to always start games like last night with Joel Embiid. I mean, he played 36 minutes, 43 points, 14 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 3 block shots, a plus 14. Shot 15 of 27 from the field, 12 of 16 from the free throw line. I mean, is there anything to say? He had the last 2 games, he looked a little sluggish, looked a little tired. And last night, he definitely showed, again, not only why he's the MVP, but why he's the leader of this team in the league. Because he had 2 subpar performances, specifically the last game against the Heat, where he just really looked, out of it. And he wasn't going to let that define him. He came back this game, and he said, I'm going to dig deeper. That's what great players do. They dig deeper when they have to. Dug deeper and just put on a clinic, getting the ball down low. I mean, I don't know if I remember a time in his career, as I do the last 4 or 5 games, even the Heat game, where I see Joel Embiid getting the ball down low in the block as much as he does now. It's like a light's gone off between Doc Rivers, him, with James Harden there. Get down low. I mean, he's getting down low. He's making moves that I've never seen big men make. And it's so crazy to watch. I mean, I'm old enough to have watched a little Hakeem Olajuwon. And this guy people always compare him to the Dream. I think he's better than the Dream to an extent right now, the way he's playing right now, because Hakeem didn't have the outside shot that Joel Embiid had. He's basically the same player, except Joel shoots over 30% from deep. Would the Dream have if the game was different, if he played now? Maybe. I don't know. So that was part 1 of the situation. Part 2, Tyrese Maxey and James Harden, they definitely had their worst night shooting together in a while. Maxey, somehow 6 of 13. I mean, he scored like out of his 17 points, I think he had 8 or 9 of them in the last like 5 or 6 minutes of the game. So he really did have a pretty off night last night. It just was he scored some late buckets to really help seal the game up, but also he had one big three there. And, in garbage time, he just couldn't get off the court. James Harden 5 of 15, shoot 1 of 5 from 3, but he still had 8 rebounds, 14 assists. So James Harden still found ways to affect the game on an off shooting night all the times. Matisse Thybulle, first 2 games with James Harden, excellent cutting, dunking, layups, whatever. The last couple games he went. I called him out yesterday morning. I said he's gone 0 points 2 games in a row. Last night, 12 points on 4 or 5 shooting. Knocked down his 1 3-point shot, made a couple free throws, and he cut to the basket at least 3 times and made easy layups and dunks. And that's what James Harden, even when James Harden has an off shooting night, it's his court vision. We talk about Ben Simmons' court vision all the time, which we'll talk about him in a second. And James Harden makes Ben Simmons look like an average court vision guy. I mean, because the guy can see everything. And he's got, they talked about on the broadcast last night, he's got that slow, he like lulls you to sleep with his little pitter-patter dribble. Then all of a sudden, boom, he's right by you. Or boom, pass, you don't even see it coming because you're just like watching him go around and do his little thing. And boom, ball gone or he's gone. And so it's so insane to watch and be able to see a guy like James Harden in a Sixers uniform and what he's capable of doing. And how it affects the other guys on the team. Matisse Thybulle, again, 28 minutes last night. Only had a rebound. He actually didn't have any steals or blocks. He had some tip balls and stuff like that, which he's always going to get a lot of those. But he actually affected the game. He was, he had more points scored than Tobias Harris last night. Which Tobias Harris, man, the guy's got to figure it out. You just see the confidence just draining from him. And Tobias Harris is a guy that even when it gets tough, he's still an overly confident guy. There's just no confidence left in him right now. None whatsoever. It's just zapped out of him. And something's got to snap. I mean, he keeps putting up the shots. He keeps giving it his best shot. Keeps going for it. I mean, 4 of 10 shooting last night. 0 of 3 from 3 deep again. Only 8 points, 3 rebounds. I mean, guys, he's got it. I mean, you guys all know I'm a big Tobias Harris supporter. But you got to do better than that. It's got to be better than that. He's got to be better than that. You can't do that, Tobias. You got to figure it out. He's got to keep shooting. And I said it before. Shooter's going to shoot. You got to keep shooting. You got to shoot yourself out of it. But he's got to do it soon because now we're not 1 or 2 games into this new grouping with James Harden here. We're now 5 games into it. As it drags along, it's not getting better. It's getting worse. He's not finding his role and what the new role is on this team. I really think right now it seems like it's Tobias and Harden. When Joel and Tyrese sit and Joel and Tyrese together when the other 2 sit. I said it before, and I think I'll say it again. I think that grouping needs to be flipped a little bit. Whether you pair Joel and Tobias together with Shake it as the guard, I don't think that's the right way. I think it should be Tobias and Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese with his driving ability, maybe gets, forces Tobias to have more of an offensive role. But with James Harden there, I don't know. Maybe that's just not working. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. The next big thing that came out last night was Furkan Korkmaz. Everybody's been all over the Turkish MJ and Furkan Korkmaz and how he's not been playing well. I mean, he's never played great, but he's been playing really bad the last few games, last few weeks even. And everybody's been calling for more Isaiah Joe. Get Joe in there. Get Korkmaz on the bench. Korkmaz did not play last night. Not 1 minute. He's the only guy on the Sixers last night that had a DNP coach's decision. Only guy. Isaiah Joe was the guy that came in. He played 11 minutes. And guys, let's be honest. Isaiah Joe, if you're relying on Isaiah Joe, we're not making a deep run in the playoffs. But at this point in the season, you give the kid some burn. You give the kid some run to see what he's got. His defense is not good. He got beat on defense quite a few times. He shot 1 of 4 from 3 last night. He's got that really high-arcing side spin shot. Whether that could be successful long-term in the NBA, I don't know. But it can't be any worse than what Furkan Korkmaz does. And that's the problem with Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers gets very, very stubborn and stuck on his rotations and his player usages and his plays that he runs. But lately we've started to see a little tweak in it. See Isaiah Joe, get burned last night. We've seen zone defense a few times lately. We never see zone defense from Doc Rivers. Little things like that make me believe Doc Rivers is willing to make the adjustments necessary to take this team and our big three, Tobias or Joel, Tyrese Maxey, and James Harden, and maybe do whatever it's necessary, whatever tweaks he needs to do, swallow his pride and what he thinks is right and do what is right to get us to where we need to be, which is that promised land, which is that title. So that's interesting. But again, guys, the people calling for Isaiah Joe, we got to remember Isaiah Joe. I mean, he's young. Maybe he develops, but Isaiah Joe is not the answer. It was nice to see him last night over Furkan get the minutes. But guys, come playoff time, he's not important at all. He will not. Furkan and Isaiah Joe should not see the court in the playoffs at all. He just shouldn't. Not at all. George Niang, again, ever since I tweeted out how much I dislike George Niang has been on fire. 4-7 from 3 again last night. 14 points. Guy play. He leads the bench unit basically at this point. 19 minutes again last night was the most minutes off the bench. But the thing is, I mean, I want to clarify. I don't have George Niang hate. I don't dislike George Niang. I just made it because I made the statement on Twitter after he made a stupid turnover in a big moment of a game. I don't remember what game it was. It was like 5 or 6 games ago. I think we even won the game. It might have been the Minnesota game. I don't even know. But George Niang, he's like one of those guys. He just seems like the most unathletic basketball player. I mean, he looks like he's got 2 left feet out there. He looks like he's slower than molasses. But yet the guy knocked down shots. And when he gets hot, the guy can hit. I mean, last night when he started hitting shots, every time he put up a shot, I know he was 4-7, so just over 50%. Every time he put up that shot, I thought it was going in last night. Every time. It's when he posts up. It's when he tries to play D, which he's a scrappy little guy on D. He's like Mighty Mouse. He tries his best, but he just seems so slow. He seems like Andre Miller. If anybody remembers Andre Miller when he was the Sixers point guard, which there was a clip of him on the broadcast last night because they were showing the last game at the Spectrum last night. And the starting backcourt of Andre Miller, Andre Iguodala, Sammy D, Willie Green, and that squad there. Andre Miller, he was the slowest point guard with the most awkward-looking shot. But, dude, he got the job done. So maybe my George Niang hate should stop, but I'm going to keep hating on him, hoping that it turns him into a better player or continues to have a hot streak there for him. The key, though, is last night in 19 minutes. The games that he plays 28, 29 minutes, that's when you start to see his shots start to get cold. That's when you start to see the short shots. He cannot be playing 28 minutes a game. You keep him in that 16 to 20-minute range. You keep his legs fresh. That's when you get peak and efficient George Niang. So Doc Rivers, he's done that the last actual couple games. He hasn't played 20 minutes in a few days. Keep it that way. That's what you want out of George Niang, because then that's when the rest of it will continue to go. Real quick, back to the Ben Simmons situation. Obviously, the next game for the Sixers is on Thursday night against those Brooklyn Nets. Obviously, Ben Simmons is not playing the game. No surprise there. But they are saying that he's going to be on the bench for this game in Philly. I'm really curious to see what kind of reaction Philly gets. And Doc Rivers made a joke in jest, I guess, about saying that the Sixers should do a tribute video to Ben Simmons. I don't know if they would do that. I don't think that's reading the room right. That'll just bring down more boos and more this and that. I don't think it's necessary. Maybe they do it on their social media page or something like that. But I would not be doing it in the stadium. I just don't see why he would subject himself and his team to what would happen if he was sitting on the bench there in Philly. But we'll see. Ben Simmons is an interesting character. I know I'll be watching. I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again today. And I'll say it again Thursday when we preview that game on Thursday, that I think Joel Embiid should rest that game, actually. I know it was either Jason or Mark. I know he should play because he's going to want to shove it down Ben Simmons' throat and go, this is my team and whatnot. But Joel Embiid needs a break. They got today, Tuesday, and tomorrow, Wednesday off. They got Thursday's game. Then they got Friday and Saturday off. Joel Embiid's tired. You can see it. You can see the exhaustion in him sometimes. Dude, if you gave him that Thursday off, that would be 5 days of basically managing that body. I think it's something that Doc Rivers, and Daryl Morey need to consider. You got DeAndre Jordan. You got Paul Millsap. You should be able to still beat the Brooklyn Nets on Thursday with those two guys as your center because you've got James Harden now. Maybe that's what gets Tobias Harris out of the slump, forcing him to need to pick up some of that offensive slack. Maybe that gets him out of his slump. You still got Tyrese Maxey, who's a superstar in the waiting. You still got James Harden, one of the best players. This team should be fine if they wanted to give Joel Embiid. You're going to have to give him a blow somewhere on the schedule, maybe a couple blows on the schedule. I don't know. But to me, that's where I'm giving him one blow is on Thursday, just so he gets a really, really long break. I'm looking at the rest of the schedule after that. Then after that, you go to Orlando. Then you got Denver. You got Cleveland. You got Dallas. You got some tougher games. But this is the end of that tough stretch. I said Cleveland, Miami, Chicago, Brooklyn. You had 4 super tough games in a row, the 4th through the 10th of March. They're 2-1 so far. They can beat Brooklyn on Thursday night and come out of that stretch 3-1. That is a major, 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 major win for them. And then, like I said, you go through this next stretch. You got some mediocrely tough games. You got Miami game. Then you go on the West Coast to face the Lakers and the Clippers and the Suns. Getting tough, but the Suns, I mean, without Chris Paul, they're a different team. And you got Milwaukee, and then you go that final 7-game stretch. Man, it's going to be a roller coaster ride to close out the season. But I really think that this is the opportune moment on Thursday night. It's not the popular opinion. It's not going to be a popular opinion at all. But that's the moment where I give Joel Embiid the blow. I give him the break. Let him have 5 days off. He can run some light practice with the team. Absolutely. But that's not the same as in-game, stress on the body. But giving him 5 days off with no games, I think would be huge because you can just tell he's spent at this point. He's putting out so much energy on a given night. It's a game. It's a game I would consider it, guys. Again, hit me up. Any of my thoughts and opinions on these shows, hit me up on Twitter at Beard of Knowledge. Let me know your thoughts on anything that we do or whatever we talk about here because, I crave the interaction with you guys. I love it. I love the support on this show, and I love what we do. So, hit me up on Twitter, anything and everything, and I will answer them as best as I can. I will interact with you, and we're going to get some background music out here as I wrap this show up. Again, Training in the AM every Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. on DSM Media. We got 2 sponsors on the show now. We got DSM Media's main sponsor, Manscaped, the leader of men's grooming products, manscaped.com. Promo code DSM for 20% off and free shipping. And again, my newest sponsor is 99jersey.com. Check them out. Everybody always asks where I got my Sugar Shane Falco jersey. They've got fantastic jerseys. They don't have Dallas Goedert or Lee Johnson or James Harden. They got James Harden's college jersey. They probably have Dallas Goedert college jersey. They got college jerseys, high school jerseys, jerseys from movies and TV shows. Quality product, and a lot of fun jerseys. The Kobe Bryant Lower Merion jersey is my favorite on their site, above and beyond. There's no doubt about it that that's the number one. That'll be the next one that I buy. They also got Shaq. They got Penny Hardaway. They got Stephon Marbury. They got jerseys from Chinese. All different teams. Excellent place. Check them out. 99jersey.com. Use my promo code TRENDING at checkout. The name of the show, Trending, and they'll get you 15% off. I believe they have free shipping going on their website right now. So make sure you check them out. 99jersey.com. Anyway, guys, it's been a fantastic Trending in the AM. We're going to wrap it up today. Unfortunately, again, shout out to Arthur Anderson. We had a little miscommunication again there. Second one of those clients. These guys are all over the world, miscommunicating on the time zones and stuff like that. We'll get them back on. Tomorrow I got a different member. We're going to try. I'm going to confirm right now, after the show, time zone issues will be resolved and figured out with all these guests. We'll be back tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. again with one of the other clients and guests. Everybody have a great day. Be well. Enjoy your Tuesday. And like we're ending the shows nowadays, 6ers in 5, baby.